Good morning, good morning. Welcome to this review of Off Center by Damon Knight. I've got this beautiful little 1977 Methuen Press Magnum Books collection with this fantastic cover by George Smith. I don't think this cover is meant to reflect any particular story or event in the book so much as a sort of general, could apply to several of them, amazing weird fiction, which is Damon Knight to a T. Okay, Damon Knight. You could probably do a whole video about him, but I'm probably not the person to do it. Was Damon Francis Knight, in fact. He was born in 1922 and he died in 2002. He was an American author, science fiction author specifically, I do believe, but he was also an editor and a critic. And as a critic, he's got the less joyous, perhaps, reputation. Oh, he was also married to another excellent science fiction author, Kate Wilhelm, which I only discovered, I think it was last year. His first professional sale was a cartoon. I also didn't know that until yesterday when I started researching this review. I haven't seen it or any of his cartoons. I bet they're quite good, strong, weird, because everything he writes is weird. Right there on the side of speculative fiction through science fiction and into the horror, and there's a fair amount of horror in this little collection of 6 stories. Nope, 8 stories. I hope I've reviewed them all. Yes, I have. Okay, Knight's forte, everyone agrees, is the short story. And he was largely acknowledged by the science fiction writers of his day as a master of the short story. And he was very involved in the science fiction community of his day. He was the founder of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, co-founded a few others. But his critiques were harsh. Notoriously in 1945, he wrote that A. Van Vogt was a pygmy who has learned to operate an overgrown typewriter. Don't think that went down well, and eventually people started refusing to publish his reviews. That's never a good sign. Some of his more caustic reviews are against authors and books that I really enjoyed myself. Luckily, I'd read his short stories beforehand. Now, Damon Knight is one that is very, very hard to find, and I've only got half a dozen things that he's written. One of his novels. I've recently found out that he actually had quite a few novels. I didn't realize that he had as many as that. I thought he was mostly short stories. My first story by him was In Deep, and it had a wonderful glob with many eyeballs on the cover, and I can't find it. This is a tragedy. I think it must have been a fatality of one of my moves, but I'd had that disintegrating book since I was a teenager. Very sad. I'm going to look for it seriously today. Off Center is a fairly recent acquisition. I can't remember where or when I got it, but I was very thrilled and I was saving it. So I'm doing a bit of an ABC challenge. In order to get through my monumental to read shelf, I'm trying to read alphabetically. I think you could almost say that I discovered the alphabet recently. I just alphabetized my books a couple of years ago after Ira from SF Words of Wonder did that, and I was impressed. And then about last year, I alphabetized my to-read shelf, which is vast, and I realized that I was getting stuck in certain portions of that shelf, and if I go through alphabetically 2 or 3 books per letter of the alphabet, then I might diversify my reading a bit. So I'm currently in authors whose surnames begins with K, and I picked up this short story collection. Now, Damon Knight's prose in it is just as amazing as you would ever expect. I don't know too much about this book. I think Damon Knight probably edited it and put it together himself. He was an editor after all, a very accomplished one. He was the publisher of a major magazine for, I think, all of its lifetime. I think I've got a few of those as well. I can't remember the name of the magazine. But it's out there somewhere, and I'm sure you can find it on the internet just as well as I could. Okay, in this one, we've got the titles of the stories, but we've also got some history of them. It's like when they were copyrighted, at least. I did not read them all in order, but I will review them in order. The first story is What Rough Beast, and it was copyright 1958 from Mercury. This is a breathtakingly unusual story. And by the way, none of these are going to be spoilers until the end when I say spoilers. At that point, you should probably, if you haven't read them, you should probably leave this video, go find them, read them, and then come back. Okay, so this is set in New York. Most of his stories are set in America. And you've got a young man working in a restaurant when an accident occurs. His speech marks him as an immigrant to America, which I guess is a kind of topical again today. And the accident occurs because he went up to someone who was chopping and distracted them, so he cut his finger, and there's this long slew of problems happening. The manager says he probably won't get to work there anymore. He feels terribly responsible. He even accompanies the man to the hospital. Policemen start to talk to him. He realizes he's going to have to vanish because they're going to realize that he isn't there legally. Where is he from? The policeman asks. He says he's from Russia. So the policeman starts to talk to him in Russian, which he doesn't know. Now, Damon Knight has done a really good job in this story of the way he talks. So you can clearly tell that he's from somewhere, and it does feel Slavic, but not from where. So here it goes. I say quickly, I will pay. I took out money, almost all I have in purse. Please, for me is pleasure. Here, you take. I pushed money at man behind window. That's when he's paying for the injury of Mr. Frank, the person he distracted at the restaurant. This one's got a major quirk to it, and we travel through the story for a while, and it's so well written that you kind of forget that there's going to be a quirk. There's going to be a speculative. And the speculative here is that this young man who grew up somewhere, I'm not going to tell you where, it doesn't much matter. It's integrated into the story. It's worth reading for itself. But he can turn, and he's been able to do that since he was a child. He can reach into the past and turn. So a thing that didn't happen, that had happened, didn't happen. He basically recreates the present based on the past, from the past. But there are repercussions to his turning. There are repercussions to him, to the world around him, and particularly to his place in it, because he seems to be unable to walk away from the turning completely, and yet it causes him untold problems, especially when people find out about it. Now, he finds out that Mr. Frank's daughter, the reason they don't have much money and Mr. Frank is so tired because he's working 2 jobs is because his daughter has this major scar from an accident no insurance would pay, and he turns, so it isn't so. Is this a good thing? Probably. Do people's memories go from what used to be? No, they don't. They know what's happened. He knows what's happened, and things go downhill from there. It's a fascinating and engrossing story. Once you're in it, you are thoroughly in it, and you don't want to get out. It's not that long a story. It's about, I don't know, 30-something pages. I was mesmerized and mystified and involved, intensely involved in this story and this person's journey throughout. There's a quirk to the end which belongs in the spoilers. So, I gave that story 5 out of 5 stars because it was just so good. Again, not the first I read. Okay, the second story is called The Second Class Citizen. It's written in 1963, or was published in 1963 by Galaxy. And it starts with a scientist in what's obviously a very unusual installation, and he's taking a group of visitors around a lab, and it turns out that he works with the dolphin communications, which was very topical for the 60s when dolphins first came into the public eye as being intelligent and having conversations, and everyone was researching them. Everyone from Madeleine L'Engle to Damon Knight wrote stories about it. Even Man McCaffrey fell in with that one. So it's a great description. He takes them around, and there's one particular dolphin that he works with a lot. The dolphin swims voluntarily into the channel. The dolphin can talk. It's learned to talk, but it's obviously not using its mouth, which in a dolphin is far more rigid than in a primate. It's using its blowhole to modulate sounds. And our main protagonist... Oh! I love dinosaurs. I love birds. Come here, bird. And it's speech that the scientists can understand, but his visitors really can't. So that's interesting. And the dolphin has learned to be hoisted out of the water onto a kind of mechanized sling and use that to manipulate things. It's quite interesting. It does feel dated for a part of it, but then it has an ending quirk as well. As they're leaving the installation, the scientist asks one of the visitors who hasn't talked before, an attractive young girl, what she thinks, and she thinks it's horrible. It's trying to make a dolphin be a human when the dolphin should just be the dolphin. That I found deeply insightful, and that was the first hint to me that this story was going to be more than what it seemed to be. Even for what it seemed to be, it was good. Damon Knight used the proper scientific name for the dolphin, Tersiops truncatus. He talks about elements of the dolphin that are very scientific, and I like that. Anyhow, and he mentions Dr. John C. Lilly, who was one of the first people to work with dolphin communication. So I liked all that a lot. The ending is post-apocalyptic with a twist, where the dolphin ends up supreme over the human. And it was probably a 3-star read for me until we got to the end, and then Damon Knight turned it on its head, as he does so well, and it became a 4-star read. Story number 3 is Be My Guest. This was originally copyright 1958, Kingside publication. This is a weird story. It is horror through and through, and I think it's the longest one in the collection, and it is viscerally scary as you're going through it. So it starts off with Kip, who is at the funeral for George. George was a scientist, and Kip sometimes worked in his lab cleaning glassware, as he offhandedly puts it. George had just discovered a vitamin from a natural substance, pig liver, and it does go into this vitamin and how it's offset, how it's absorbed, and so forth, which was good. This broadcasting resumes after a note from our bird sponsor. So we were with Be My Guest. Kip has come back from George's funeral, and he's very miserable. He's a bit scattered as well. I've mentioned that George had synthesized a vitamin from natural ingredients, and that his subjects, his test animals, had gone insane from it. Now, Kip, after the funeral, explains most of this to the reader, or Knight explains to the reader through Kip's mediation of discussing it with a very beautiful young woman called Angelica that he is interested in. When they get back to his place, it's essentially been trashed by Nancy, who's the daughter of George, but who has some psychiatric difficulties. She has decided that she and Kip are a couple made for each other. They're going to be together forever. And Kip is refusing to call in the police or a psychiatric evaluation for him because he just couldn't live with himself if that happened, because of his affection for George. Now, the next morning, after cleaning up most of his house, Kip goes to make a coffee, finds that he can't make coffee for some reason, so instead of that, he drinks the prune juice that had been left in the fridge by Nancy on her visit the night before. She had spiked it with cognac, and he has a wondering moment, why would you spike it with cognac, before realizing that the oily taste underneath that the cognac is there to hide is the taste of the vitamin. So now he's had a dose of this vitamin that sent all of George's test animals insane and into convulsions. It turns out that what this vitamin does is it allows you to see ghosts. And the ghosts are of a peculiar kind. They aren't inhabiting houses, they're inhabiting humans. So the central concept of Be My Guest is that what if humans, such as Kip, can be essentially a kind of apartment building for ghosts that inhabit and to some extent control it. It's a very, very weird concept, and it's done very, very spooky. This is a completely horror, spooky book, and it's got so many permutations and he mixes so much into it that you're engrossed from start to finish. There's a couple of things about it that I will mention that aren't terribly spoilery. At one point, our protagonist Kip is thinking about, could this be happening to some people all over the world? What if those areas of the world where you had a lot of ancestor worship weren't actually just mythology or superstition? What if these were communities that were eating the substance naturally, but without eating any of the things that would break down the substance faster? So it has to break down naturally in the body. The caveat here is that the artificial vitamin that was made by George does not break down naturally at all. So there's a lot to this story. I think I said already that this is probably the longest in the collection. It keeps you breathless on the edge of your seat for the whole thing. I really recommend this one to Chris from Liminal Spaces. I think it's his cup of tea. It's more than slightly liminal and very, very weird, and absolutely at times wild. Do recommend. Story number 4 is called God's Knows. It was copyright 1964 by Greenleaf Publishers. Oh, by the way, Be My Guest was a 5-star read without a doubt. It was probably 10 out of 5 stars, to be honest. God's Knows, story number 4, is a tiny story. It's 2 pages or less. You're in a loft in the 60s drinking something foul like vodka with orange squash, and some woman talking about metaphysical notions like what God's knows should be. It's kind of cute, it's kind of funny, it's exceptionally well written. It's not in any way that I can tell science fiction, though Damon Knight was probably smarter than me and he may be fooling me. It was quaint. Not my favourite story by any means. I gave it 3 stars. Number 5 is Catch That Martian. This was copyright 1952 by Galaxy. And this is a first-person narrated. Knight is great in that his narration style, that it differs from one to the other. I think that many authors will always be first-person narration or third-person narration, but he varies it. In Catch This Martian, our main protagonist is a young policeman in, I'm going to say probably New York City. I feel like there might have been a Times Square, which I think is in New York. Anyhow, this weird thing is happening. People are being made invisible. And not completely immaterial. You can still see them, they can still see you, but you can't touch each other. They can't actually touch anything. And it talks about the first one was a lady who came out of a cinema, and I love the irony of the narration and the way it's presented, and the logic of the story opens up with someone was making people into ghosts and people can't do that, so it stands to reason it must be a Martian. Anyhow, the cop really is young. He's responsible for his mother. He really wants the money that he'll get from figuring out who it is. So he starts sleuthing into who it is. And I'm not going to say any more than that because this ending is a surprise and it's worth reading for itself. It's not a long story. It's very enjoyable. It's a bit of fun. This is one of those ones that is slightly humorous and ironic in a way that I enjoy very much. Story number 6 is Dulcie and Decorum. Was it Dulcie and Decorum? I've got it written down here as Dulcie, but I don't think that's right. Is it? Dulcie and Decorum. I just forgot a letter in my review. That's first early onset dementia. Dulcie and Decorum was copyright 1955 by Galaxy. And this is an odd one. It's got two protagonists who are writers finding out that when they're typing on their old school tick, tick, tick typewriters, they're getting messages. But while they can read the messages don't really make sense and they don't know where they're coming from. One person hypothesizes at one stage that they may be coming from the future, and the two people are slowly becoming detached from reality. They're being cut out of reality in a strange sort of way that is, once again, more than slightly horror and weird. This story might not be for everyone. Some people might find the style dry, and as they try to decipher the gibberish and slowly find themselves being taken out of reality by these messages that are obsessing them even when they're not going near their typewriters, it has probably dated more than anything else in this collection. The ending is... okay, this is a spoiler. Go away if you don't want to hear a spoiler while my hand is up. Dulcie and Decorum are actually two future computers. They are war computers. And they are fighting a war. Oh, no one's paying attention to this hand, are they? They're fighting a war. They've been created to fight a war without going through all the messy elements of battle that happen in a modern war, for example, or a war that would have been modern in the 1950s. However, these computers have been programmed to win and to fight, lacking a couple of decidedly important elements from the human perspective. And I think that a modern reader will read this and go, oh, ho-hum, war computers that haven't taken the human message to heart and don't care about human values, been done so many times before. But this was from 1955 and it hadn't been done before. So I'd say that Dulcie and Decorum might well be one of the forerunners of investigating the idea of war computers and what can go wrong. I quite enjoyed it. I will agree that it's a little bit longer than it has to be and a little bit dry, but it is Damon Knight and his pacing is his own, and for what he's created, it doesn't really put a foot wrong. Story number 7 is Masks. I think that was actually the first one I read from this collection. Oh yes, Dulcie and Decorum, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Masks is copyright 1968 by HMH Publishing Co. I've got no idea what that is. Well done, you, though. It's a really, really well done little science fiction horror. It presents as science fiction, I guess, with a subject that has been rebuilt from death. Once again, I have a bird. Once again, we start in a scientific installation with a scientist from the installation taking around a group of visitors. But it rapidly becomes clear that the installation has one subject who's in this incredibly sterile environment. He's been rebuilt, not like Steve Austin, the $10,000 man, $1,000 man? Must have been more than 1,000. He's been rebuilt, but he's been rebuilt from basics. Apparently there was nothing left of him. He's basically in a completely synthetic sleeve. And the project is costing an enormous amount of money, and Washington, the American government of 1968, is reviewing whether it should be continued. Not that they're going to discontinue it and kill the person they rebuilt, but they may re-sleeve more people who are when they die, and that's what they're investigating. The main character who has been rebuilt is nasty. It's a nasty person. He's angry. He's non-human. He's not facilitating the process at all, and he's wearing a mask. Now, other people who go into the installation need to wear masks for fear of germs, aseptic environments, etc. But he's wearing a mask because he doesn't want anyone to see his remodeled synthetic face. This is definitely science fiction, and it's speculative fiction. And right at the end, it tilts you into full horror in a way that is really, really impressive and very Damon Knight. I'm not going to say in what way, but yeah, up until that last little point, I think there will be a lot of readers that go, yeah, this is a theme we've seen before often, and you'd probably even seen it before a couple of times in 1968 when this was written, but the twist takes you somewhere special. So 5 out of 5 stars for that one. The last story is called To Be Continued, and it was first copyright by 1959 by Mercury Press Incorporated. And I thought this was a pretty cute and absorbing little story. It was fairly short. The writing was very tight. There wasn't any surplus, and so it read quickly and easily. Richard Morgan is an author, and he's living in a isolated house, hut, lodge, I don't know, somewhere in fairly wild America. And one day, as he's standing there at the gate, puffing on his pipe, trying to think about how his next book will go, a mysterious figure starts walking towards him out of the woods. Now, Richard Morgan, I suspect, is based on a real author. He is a professional author. He writes a certain number of words every year. He starts a book in June. He concludes it in the following September? Or is it September? He starts a book every year. He concludes it every year. He makes a decent living out of his word count. And he likes writing uninterrupted. So he's all alone in this lodge when this mysterious figure wearing nylon blue suit. I tell you what, the 60s was a weird place. Comes out of the woods and shows him a book. And it's this beautifully bound, intoxicating book. Not like this one. It's bound with white calf leather. It feels smooth and silky. It's got a gold embossed title and author, neither of which look even slightly familiar. The name of the man who's handed it to him is LeBlanc, and there's something odd about him. The name of the book is The Outcast, and it's by Garrett N. Broom. So he reads a few snippets of it there, and then the man and the book vanish mysteriously. Goes back into his house, tries to start on his book, and he can't. He's disconcerted. The Outcast is this amazing, I'm imaging it as a kind of Conan type story, though set in the ancient world, adventure, Aztec I think it was, amazing. And Morgan can't settle to his normal style of book because The Outcast is the book that he's always wanted to write. And he can't remember enough of it, and he can't reproduce it because clearly someone else has written it. So there's a lot of ethical dilemma, and it's a very edgy story as you read it. Anyway, the book reappears once or twice, and he reads a bit more of it, and at the end, he gets to talk to LeBlanc about exactly what it is and what's happening there. And I'll say no more about that, but it's a timey-wimey, futuristic concept which the reader will have figured out while reading it. And this is the story for any writer to enjoy, and for many, many readers. Okay, so that is the 8. I gave that one a 4 out of 5. So I'd say that my average rating for this book overall, when I've calculated it all out, will probably be something like 4 point something, because there were a lot of 4 or 5 star stories in here. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I'm very glad I have read this, which I might not have gotten around to if I wasn't reading authors alphabetically. I will probably reread some of these stories again. I thoroughly recommend them to anyone who likes really strange, slightly horror, slightly SF stories. Now, a few things. Dulcie and Decorum, the idea of the two war computers, so detached from reality. And now we're going into spoilers for sure. So this is a great book, and I do recommend you read it. If you've got it on your shelf and you haven't read it yet, maybe try reading a few of those stories as you go along. If you haven't got it and you like the type of stories that I've described now, go out and get this Damon Knight or other Damon Knight, because he does the same sort of thing in most of his stories. His prose is close to immaculate, to be honest. Which is why I can forgive him for saying horrible things about other authors. Algis Budrys, I think he really hated. I like Algis Budrys. Whatever. So yes. Now, I'm going to spoil some things. So in Dulcie and Decorum, that was story number 6, which you had war computers of the future reaching back through the typewriters of the past to continue fighting. So what's happened is they've essentially killed off all of humanity, but their programming insists that they need to keep fighting against each other. Dulcie is the American-style computer. Decorum is the Russian-style computer. I'm going to say it was written in 55. Was there Cold War on there? From context, I would say yes. I can't remember when the Cold War belonged. But yes, they're reaching through the past to continue fighting with any person of the present that they can reach. And there's a first contact element to it. Yeah, there's a lot in there. Thoroughly good. Now, What Rough Beast? What Rough Beast, the first story in the collection, the person who can turn the past so that something that has happened hasn't, but without changing memories. 5 stars I gave it, and it's a great story. But the ending initially annoyed me considerably, because the ending is he's had enough of these small turns that never quite turn out right. He reaches far into the past, 2,000 years ago, to make that a person who existed doesn't. And 2,000 years, I mean, who can he really be reaching for? It's got to be Jesus Christ, right? And I thought that was a cheap and unnecessarily popularist thing for Damon Knight to do. And he doesn't spell it out for you, but 2,000 years, who's it going to be? And then the ending was unnecessarily obscure. I don't really approve of an author making me Google to understand what they've written. James Joyce, prime example. He wrote a book that you couldn't understand without reading a whole library of other books about his book. That is not a good book, in my estimation. What Rough Beast made me Google. Now, I think that's probably because I'm just not as educated in the classics as Damon Knight was and people of his generation. But the last thing we see of our protagonist, he's walking away from the park, and there's a statue standing in it with 2 young men, beautiful young men, wearing a cap. Well, it sounds like a skull cap, and I didn't get it. And one has a torch facing up, and one has a torch facing down, and I had no idea what he was on about. It may have conveyed something instantly to Damon Knight's people, but it didn't to me. So I was guessing Greek mythology based on a couple of other very, very obscure references to the city that he made, which incidentally are wrong. I don't care which particular tradition he was going for. His description of the city is wrong. It wouldn't be all grey. It'd be colourful as anything. The doors and windows, I will stop right there. He may be sourcing Greek mythology. Mithraic tradition is a very good possibility. Dioscuri, I guess. Roman, possibly. But if he's going for Roman, that's implying that Christ is responsible for the downfall of Rome, and then one of the other traditions took off. I don't know. I did not understand the end of What Rough Beast at all. That's on me. I'm just not educated enough in the classics to understand what Damon Knight was saying. But still. Other than that, it was a perfect story, so I ignored that slight annoyance at the end. So every one of these concepts is unique and fresh, and even when you think you know what's happening, he will manage to surprise you. There's surprises really in all of them, except in God's Knows. And God's Knows may have a surprise. It may just be too unique and obscure for me to understand what it is. Anyway, I've raved about this one for long enough. Damon Knight, off-centre, is truly off-centre in all the best possible ways. Thank you for watching. Read good books. Damon Knight, even if you can find it. He wrote novels as well. I even have one. I should reread that. Read good books.